This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Falcons analyst Jarvis Davis, Locked On Falcons host Freeman, and senior Falcons reporter Tori McElhaney. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And our Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So no, really, roll 9 whichever way you want. And no, really, we kind of knew this about 18. We'll discuss it all. And we always talk about the Falcons and who has that dog in them, but who has that swag? We'll download on that also. Football Party fam, you have thoughts? We'll talk about it. But first, Mike had a nice little combo recently. That's Michael Vick and Michael Penix Jr., who had a one-on-one interview. And Vic asked Penix what his style of true definition of leadership are. So Penix said, quote unquote, influence. He also said, I'm not always that big vocal guy. I'm going to understand my players. And for me, Tori, it wasn't so much that MPX said anything new per se, but I just liked the way he said it. And it was just a very interesting conversation that he had with Michael Vick. And of course, we'll talk about a couple other nuggets that I got out of that conversation and that you guys may have as well. But for you, what part of that phrase, influence being his true style, his definition of leadership, he's going to understand my players, what part of you is maybe the biggest takeaway of him as an emerging leader for this team?
I think it's just he is who he is. And I think that's always been something that you can, like, a lot of people can knock Michael Penix for not being this like huge personality, super boisterous, but he is. I mean, I think it was Raheem Morris who said, like, this is not a guy who's going to die from a heart attack. And like that phrase has stuck with me for months because I thought it's so funny, but it's also incredibly indicative of, I think, who Michael Penix is. And he never, ever tries to be something he's not. I think he's one of the more like genuine individuals that I've ever been around, in the sense of, I do think that he knows how to get to people, and he's not going to go about it in a way that's not genuine to himself. He's not an extroverted guy. He's not going to be the loudest guy. You're not going to hear him before you see him. And I think like there are some people who potentially playing the quarterback position, would try to mold themselves after people who are more extroverted, are more loud, are more vocal. But for Michael Penix, like, he is who he is, and he doesn't make any apologies for that. And I wouldn't want him to. Like, I think that's the big thing, is like, whatever it takes for Michael Penix to lead, whatever that looks like, I'm okay with it. You know, like, I'm okay with however he wants to go about being QB1 of this organization, because at this point in time, like, there's still a lot that we don't know about who he is, how he operates, what this organization's offense is going to look like in 2025. So I think like we're at the point now where it's more of like a fact-finding mission of like who he's going to be and how he's going to operate. And I kind of like this very chill, even-keeled, not to use all the cliches in the world, but doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, but he's just right here all the time. And I can, as someone who's not right here all the time, I can appreciate the people who are.
I love it, Tori. I love it. And I'm going to use one of the nuggets that you just said, which when I asked Aaron this question, because I like that. Fact finding. I think every little piece that we get of trying to better understand QB1 is a good thing. And so, when I was listening to the interview and kind of listened back to it a couple times, that's how I felt like, okay, he's molding and shaping himself into, in front of our eyes, free. Obviously, he knows who he is, but molding and shaping himself into who he is. And when I heard the word influence as maybe his way of describing his style of leadership and also saying my players, I was like, okay, I'm seeing that QB1 kind of mold into form.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that Penix is sort of coming into his own, and we'll see ultimately what type of leader he is when the Falcons get on the field. Because, at this stage, I've heard so much about, new leadership in Atlanta at the quarterback position year after year that I'm just kind of over it at this point in time. And it's not a shot at Michael Penix. It's just like, I need you just to make the throws, and then like I'll worry about the leadership stuff and the team to win games. And then like that will make you a great leader if the team is winning games and can maintain winning games throughout the season, which has been the problem the last couple of years. And so like for me, it is nice and refreshing to hear sort of and get more idea of what Michael Penix is. But ultimately, like the thing, I want to learn more about is like, can you be the high level quarterback that we all think you have the capability of being? And this is a step in that process for him. But yeah, that's, I'm just, after 3 years of basically hearing how the new Falcons quarterback is such a great leader, I'm just like, okay, it just falls on deaf ears for me. But I'm jaded, I'm cynical. That's how I am. And so
that's how you roll.
Yeah, so I'm just like, all
it's
right,
Monday, basically. Yeah. That's what you're saying, Free.
Right.
It's Monday.
And so I'm just like, okay, like great, awesome. Throw some touchdowns. That's all I care about at this point now. I'm at a point where I'm just like, I need the team to win games. That's all.
Fair.
Yeah, super fair.
Although, Jarvis, I love what Free is saying, but we don't have that good luxury on July 14th. All we have is conjecture right now. So I just got to be happy in the conjecture place. Yeah. So when he says influence is his way of going, and or his way of leadership, and when he talks about him as my players, maybe it's me, Jarvis, but I got a little excited. Like, okay, I kind of like that, because that's low key. That's that, like, I'm not in control in your face, like in control, but subtly, I'm letting everybody know this is my team.
I think that I'm a real big fan of the holistic approach when it comes to team building, work environment, all that stuff, running a household, all that stuff. I'm so big on that. And I think that even more so when it comes to football players, right? Because the amount of guys, a different type of guys that are in a locker room, you have to think, like, if those guys didn't play on the same team, they would never meet each other in real life. Like, that's just the facts when it comes to where these guys come from, the different demographics, all these stuff, class, all that stuff kind of comes
which he
into
talked
play.
about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think that for him to say, in order to influence someone, you have to know them. Like, you can't just tell someone what to do, and you have no idea who they are. You have no idea how they work, how they tick. Can you yell at this dude? And my MPX even talked about that. He said, can I get on him in front of everybody? Or do I have to wait until we get one-on-one in the locker room after practice and say, hey, man, I need you to run this route this way because I got to get this ball out of the hands because it's a fire blitz. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's coming right now. So it's hot. So you have to be my guy. And I think that, for him to kind of take the initiative to be able to get to know his teammates, even though he sucks at golf, and said, hey, I'm still going to play it because I know a lot of guys like to play it. So I want to be a part of that. I want to get to know these guys off the field, because a lot of times when you get to the mental aspect of your teammate, like the on the field stuff gonna be easy, right? Like, and I'm talking about not only strengths, but weaknesses as well. Like, okay, I know in this particular moment, I know he's probably going to do this. So here I'm going to go in this direction, or I'm going to turn around and check down to Bijan Robinson, because I know more than likely what I'm going to get in this particular situation. So yeah, I actually appreciate it. I know Free loads that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I know he's not really doesn't care about the human element and think these guys are robots. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think Michael Penix has the perfect approach or right mindset to how to build a culture that kind of that he identifies with, and not necessarily being a guy that just out there and just talking and rah-rah and all that stuff. That's not who he is. And I'm glad that he understands that's not who he is. And he's trying to set the tone as far as how he wants to lead going forward.
Of course, it's always rah-rah on our Atlanta football party, and we're always excited about the fact that we are sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and don't forget to use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, call an audible here for free. So, because I think Free might at least like this, because we're going to talk a little bit of strategy. So Michael Vick also said, being a left-handed quarterback, he felt like sometimes his coaches would hold back a little bit. MPX said Zach Robinson tries to hold back, but he said he tells Coach Rob to, quote, try it, call it. And MPX said he tells the OC that when he tries to just roll him out to the left, to roll him to the right. Penix said he feels better rolling to the right, although we know he's a left QB as well. So for you, Free, how much do you at least like hearing yet another example of his confidence in his ability and his versatility as to where he's going to release the ball?
Yes, this is definitely much more up my alley when it comes to this thing.
You're welcome.
The strategy involved.
Like off-season Free.
Tanisha was like, just hold on, I'm getting there.
Yeah, I'm just we're at the time in the summer where I'm just like, can we get to the season? Can we at least get to training camp at this point in time? That's basically where I'm at, where I'm just like, all right, whatever we got to talk about. Hey, we got to do a show each and every week. But yeah, I think when it comes to that, like, you love hearing that, you naturally sort of think, when you think about the Falcons and their offense and sort of rolling them out to the right when they do some of that bootleg stuff with their outside zone, it's like, or rolling him to the left, right? Because that usually comes off when they run it to the right. And then you think, well, of course they want to run it to the right because that's where Caleb McGarry and Chris Lyncham line up. And so just naturally it lines up for them to, fake a run to the right and then roll Penix to the left. And you're just thinking like, hey, like, this is going to be a staple part of our offense. But you do love hearing Michael Penix saying like, hey, roll me to the right. I'm just as good throwing across my body, rolling to my right as I am rolling to my left. And so that just adds another layer of versatility, as you say, with this offense. And so like, these are the things that get me excited. I'm like, ooh, can do different things. They, all these various things. So yeah, that does put a little pep in my step. Thank you, T.
T, what about you? What do you think?
I think for me, I just enjoy hearing this stuff, because I think that, like, for me personally, I think there's a lot that's often made about the way that Michael Penix operates within this offense as a left-handed quarterback. And I oftentimes think that what he said about, like, sometimes coaches are a bit more like hesitant to do things with me because they think that it's going to be like a weirdness, and I think like that is so funny to me, because I remember talking to TJ Yates, like, right when Michael Penix like got in the building, about like footwork and how he goes about doing it. And it was funny because talking to TJ Yates, he was a bit more like, yeah, I think I have to think about this, and this, when I really didn't have to do that. Well, whereas Michael Penix is just like, I'm just mirroring. Like, in his brain, he's like, it's not any different or any weirder for me, because this is always how I've learned. He's like, I've always been a left-handed quarterback. Like, so I think that there's oftentimes a lot made about that part of it, and the way the ball spins and the way like blocking is now that Caleb McGarry is the blindside blocker. Like, but it's funny because I even go back to something that Caleb McGarry said when he was specifically asked about like being the blindside blocker, and he's like, it's football. I'm blocking how I block. Like, I know where everything's coming from, and it doesn't change anything. And he just kept saying like, this is football. And so I think it's oftentimes like, for us on the outside looking in, like when we're like looking for things to talk about and looking for different like ideas to potentially have, we make a bigger deal out of something that's not a big deal to say Michael Penix, because he's like, this is just where I live and this is how I've always lived. So right. I always appreciate, but I do appreciate like hearing him talk to Michael Vick about that stuff and having kind of this camaraderie of like, they both are kind of like, yeah, it was always really funny hearing coaches try and talk to us about this stuff and make a bigger deal out of something that's really not. So I appreciated that a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what will it take for Zach Robinson to have the confidence to do stuff like that, right? Because we know Michael Penix wholeheartedly believes in his arm. And based off what I've seen, he has a good reason to, right? You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think it's a matter of him continuing to do the things that he needs to do to prove to Coach Rob, as he calls him, to make those calls and be confident that he's going to make those plays, because that's what it all boils down to. And in order for him to have that confidence, he has to call it, right? Like, it's kind of simple. And I think that, given with the weapons that they have and the guy that he's going to be turning around, handing it off to, like Free mentioned, as far as from a play action standpoint, yeah, it should be there. Like, the throws aren't going to be tight windows, I feel, because I feel like this offensive line is poised to be one of the better ones in the league. So I think that Coach Robinson, all he has to do is call it. Zach just has to make the call, and because he has the confidence, and they have the weapons and the personnel to be able to have some success playing off of that.
Yeah, and as a fellow Southpaw, we already know that the world is not for the 10%. So we've already adjusted and we know how to respond accordingly. So I expect Michael Penix to do just that because, hey, just like me, he's been doing it all his life. Southpaws unite. But anywho, you heard Tori say it. Penix said it too. It's just football. We'll talk about what that means under further review next. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Game Time's Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you, and this might be a good time for you to do it. I got a call just yesterday from a friend who wants to go to the Beyonce concert tonight in Atlanta, and I told her about Game Time. I said just what they said. If you watch the clock and you're getting closer to concert time, which I think is 7 p.m. tonight, they actually do drop closer when you get closer to game time, and it'll be 60% off, or in Beyonce's case, showtime for Cowboy Carter. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download that Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, Tori, at times, or Aaron, I apologize. We're going to go to you, Aaron, because we want you to feel like you have love. So I'm going to go ahead and call another audible, and you can get us out of the gates. At times, it felt
I love how we're appeasing Aaron Freeman today.
Yeah,
I love
thank
it.
I need to send him a virtual hug. I need to let him know that we are here to make
I didn't drink coffee this morning, so I'm uncaffeinated. So if I'm a little grumpy, that's probably it.
Grumpy Aaron.
That's great.
So at times it feels like Kirk Cousins and even Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota were all overthinking it, right, Free? But when Vic asked the most interesting part of being a professional quarterback to MPX, again, continuing that interview that you can see on YouTube or also at AtlantaFalcons.com, great stuff there. MPX said, quote, still just football. Throw it to your team. Don't throw it to the other team. So again, just talking about his mindset, keeping it simple, keeping the main thing, and just understanding, play the game. I mean, how important is that? Because I do feel like there were definitely times, even if we, as you were talking about the quarterbacks that the Falcons have had over the last several years, ad nauseum, you just felt like, especially with, I would say Desmond Ridder, like, dang, bruh, just don't overthink it. Just play the darn game.
Yeah, it is very refreshing to hear Michael Penix talk about it. You know, as Jarvis would say, keep it simple, stupid. And so, like, yeah, it just kind of boils down to playing football, a game that so many of these guys have been playing their entire life. And when you think about Michael Penix and sort of, again, it goes back to what we were just talking about and sort of the poise that he has, where, like, it, you know, he's not going. What's the quote that Raheem said? He's not going to die of a heart attack or whatever it is.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, and so, like, it's one of those things where, like, he has this sort of calm demeanor, and, like, that's kind of reflected in this, where it's just like he's getting this opportunity, this really big opportunity, a lot of pressures on him, and it's just like, hey, it's just simple. Throw it to your guy, throw it to the guy in the black a red or white jersey, and don't throw it to the guy in the green or yellow or purple or whatever jersey the Falcons are playing on that given Sunday. And so it'll be nice to see that actually come to fruition because, you know, as they always say, talk is cheap. And so, you know, if you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And so hopefully we will see him throwing the football a lot to his team and not to the other team, which has been the problem these last couple of years. So, yes, it is very refreshing to hear a quarterback. And based off of what little sample size we've gotten from Michael Penix, it does seem like he does live up. He does walk the walk when it comes to not making the negative plays, whether that's taking sacks, whether that's putting the ball in harm's way. He did have 3 interceptions in his 3 starts last year, but all of them were really the fault of the receiver as opposed to anything that he was doing. And so it does, like, that does refresh me in terms of like thinking about what this team can be this upcoming season at this stage in the offseason.
I like it. I like it a lot. What about you, Jarvis? When you think about that, just kind of mindset and that approach, very no nonsense, as Michael Penix Jr. talked to Michael Vick about how he sees the game. It is just football, as he said, and not overthinking it could be very important, especially because in the first 6 games, at least 4 of them out of the 6, it's another gauntlet of a start to the season for the Falcons yet again. But ultimately speaking, if you just kind of keep that approach, I think that will be helpful, especially because you may have some of those defenses coming at you with what they feel like, oh, okay, well, this is a quote unquote rookie quarterback for all intents and purposes. I mean, you only played 3 games, so we'll try to throw things at you. Know what the Bucs defense is going to look like. Vikings are solid. Commanders are that defense. So yeah, I think you do have to go in with the mindset of, let me just do my basic job. Let me just focus on what I need to do, getting it done, and not overthinking this thing.
Absolutely, because here's the thing. Like, we have proof. Like, the proof is in the film. Just look at certain moments, like against the Washington Commanders. That throw on 4th and 13 to Kyle Pitts to take that game to overtime. Like, that's big time stuff. And he was just as calm and cool and collected as could be when you think about it. Or just go to the Carolina game when the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. He just kept scoring. He just kept scoring. He's just going out there and kept scoring. And of course, they end up losing in overtime. But when you have a quarterback that can be in the midst of poop, right? Like, there's a lot of poopy stuff going on, right? And he can just be just as calm as cool, collected, and just stay focused and focused on the task at hand and finding a way to win. Like, that kind of helps you understand, like, okay, regardless of whatever's going on, regardless if he throws 3-4 picks, God forbid that, you know, Kirk did that last year. You know, quarterback got me in my feels. You know, that series got me in my feels a little bit, T. You know what I'm saying? Like, you made me watch all
coming to you.
Yeah.
And your commentary on it.
Yes, can't wait. But yeah, I think this he can be like that because he's done it. He's proved it, right? He took University of Washington, the Washington Huskies, you know, to the college football playoff, and no one was ever thinking that he was going to be able to do that, or no one even saw that coming, you know. And that just goes to show you that if given the right talent and the right situation, he's going to come through more often than not.
Yeah, Tori, I saw one article that talked about him, of all of the rookies from 2024, and saying he was the guy that everybody really is high on, thinking like he can have a breakout of a season. And I think part of it will be that calm, cool demeanor and the focus of saying, it really is just football. I'm going to treat every game like, okay, I'm going to go out there and I have an expectation that we've got the resources and the tools and I've got what it takes to win.
I think it's interesting too that, like, as you know, this is the time of year, as Free has said over and over, like, this is the time of year where literally everyone's just like writing to write, and there are all these lists and there's all these different things. And what's interesting is every single time I feel like they have spoken about Michael Penix Jr. from a national perspective, it's been, well, the Falcons didn't really win when he had his 3 starts and he, you know, threw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And I often am kind of like, I think the perception of people who have seen him play in those 3 starts compared to the people who are just sitting there looking at a stat line it is astronomically different because of the fact of everything that we've kind of been talking about. What Free was saying, those 3 interceptions, 2 of the 3 hit the receivers in the hands, and they couldn't come down with it. And then, of course, there's the whole – I mean, everybody's like, well, they only won 1 game with Michael Penix as a quarterback. He never had a chance to actually go in overtime and get the ball back. Like that, I think people are kind of forgetting that part of it. That because of the way those games went, and because of the let's be honest, like the letdowns of the defensive play at times made it to where I think if you're looking at just Michael Penix Jr. and the 3 starts from a national perspective and not actually watching the games in totality, you're not seeing the full effect of Michael Penix Jr. as a potential franchise level quarterback that could potentially, they hope, be a long-term staple in Atlanta. Well, like now you have the opportunity to really see that in more of a broader scope as we get into 2025. And that's something I'm personally really excited about, because I don't think that people were as high on Michael Penix as maybe they should have been, simply because of the fact that the Falcons weren't winning games. And I say this a lot. I think that when it comes to the Falcons, I think that there are so many individual players that are putting up significant like career numbers. Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and they're not getting, I think, the biggest spotlight possible because the Falcons as a team are not winning games. And so I'm really curious to see how 2025, if the Falcons can go out and start winning games, how all of these individual players gets on the radar of like national perspective. And that is including Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah. And you're right. When I look at articles like the one that said he was going to be a breakout, the way that article is crafted, I said, okay, clearly this is someone who's actually paying attention to the quality of play versus looking at the quantity, meaning just the numbers themselves in a box score. So there was one more nugget that we gleaned from season 2 of Quarterback when Andy Dalton asked Kirk Cousins how he was doing. One thing he said about last season was this, and I quote, "I was just turning the ball over. I just couldn't figure it out. For me, the turnovers have come in bunches in my career. Like in Washington, I got benched my 3rd year, and then 1 year I was leading the league in picks halfway through the year. And I was able to flip it around and play a lot better after the bye." But same thing happened here. We know he's talking about the interceptions and not the turnaround, because it never did. So Jarvis, you wanted to pick at this. You got an opportunity, because you were not all the way sold when Kirk was signed. I remember you were a little bit concerned. You had some thoughts. You had some worries about whether or not this was the right move to make, or whether or not it was an overreach for the Falcons. So looking back, is the propensity to turn the ball over one of your reasons, and maybe one of the things that more attention should have been paid to?
Well, not necessarily the turnover piece. I was just looking at the situation, right? Like, this was his first major injury. It was an Achilles injury. He was 35-year-old, getting ready to turn 36. And a lot of times when you have these major injuries like these, that first season coming out of it, it's kind of like a catch-up. You're playing catch-up, and you're towards the end of your career. Like, it just didn't seem like all of those factors coming into play. And of course, the turnovers. We understand that Kirk, can turn the ball over, but he put up some really good numbers. So I was willing to kind of put that to the side for at least a little bit, given what we've been seeing. And Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota were awful. They were terrible. They were terrible play, not terrible human beings. They were terrible on the field. So I think when you just taking all that in and just looking at it from a totality perspective, it just made me. I had a lot of pause. I just had a lot of pause, and then you got the $100 million guaranteed, and it was like, all right, okay. And then I go back to what Ross said. He was just like, man, I'm looking for an elite processor. I was like, yeah, most of the time you don't get that from college quarterbacks, for the most part. So I was just like, all right, okay, I kind of get it, because you're under pressure to win. The GM was under pressure to win. So he didn't have time to try to build around a young quarterback at that particular time or in that moment. But I feel like now, just looking back, it it kind of sort of came to fruition. You know, like when you get hit in the Saints game, and then your play just went from sugar to you know what, you know, like that happens when you're that old playing the quarterback position in this league. It just like Tom Brady doesn't happen playing the 40 and winning Super Bowl. That stuff don't happen often, man. That man is the GOAT. That's why that happened, you know. So I think now just looking back, looking into it and kind of understanding it, like it kind of, I was a little upset, but for me, just watching this series, I have a lot more respect for Kirk than I did before. I got a chance to talk to Kirk kind of like to the side before a press conference. And when you meet a person, he's very impressionable. Like he's a real solid dude. Like he comes off as that. And I wholeheartedly believe that. But when you take that type of person and put him in that situation, and you have the consecutive games without a passing touchdown, and you just go on that losing streak, it's so hard not to just evaluate the player and not the person.
I think for me, as I was like watching the quarterback series, it was weird to kind of see the lens of what was happening, like completely after the fact.
Yes.
And like, because we all four had the opportunity to watch all of this happen live. And then to go back and watch kind of the season unfold as you're taking a step back through the lens of this like Netflix quarterback show, it was so interesting to me to remember how good October was. Like how good that Monday night game against the Eagles was in week 2. Like how good things were. Like I remember in the moment being like, oh, this is like really cool, really fun football. But then to like go back and to watch it again, it was like, because you forget about that stuff. You forget about how good that October was because of how not good November was. And I just like, and then you're seeing kind of all this dialogue on Twitter about like, oh, the Falcons should have made a change earlier than what they did. And I think a lot of times people are looking at that in revisionist history, like to the point of what I think everybody said, and Kirk Cousins included. Like I did think that Kirk deserved and the opportunity and the chance to right the ship. Like people, like I keep seeing people being like, oh, he should have been benched after Denver. No, he shouldn't have, because the Saints game was right before that Denver game, and he didn't play bad in that Saints game. Like the reason the Falcons lost that Saints game was not because Kirk Cousins played horribly. It was because they couldn't it's because they couldn't make a kick. And so I think like that has to go into consideration. And then you're coming off of an October where he was the number 1 passer in the league, and they're winning games, and they're at the top of the NFC South. And like then you have that Denver game, and you can kind of throw it out there to be kind of like that was right before the bye week. And the defense, the secondary was not there. There was no one in that secondary. And and so you kind of take that for what it was. And then that Chargers game happens coming out of the bye, and you're like, wait a minute. And then it's Minnesota, and you're like, oh, it's not getting any better. Like, so I understand kind of where people are coming from, going back and rewatching kind of the show, because it's moving at a much quicker pace, and it makes it seem like things are like, oh, you're waiting for something to happen. But it was like at that point in time, I understood the decisions that were made, especially considering that Kirk, I don't think I mean, he's kind of saying it himself. Like he's like, you know, when the shoulder and the elbow went, and the issues I was having with the ankle, but also at the exact same time, like you don't want Michael Penix to get out on the field, because then you as Kirk Cousins, you're like, am I ever going to get that starting job back? And I think it's all human emotion. It's all like human psychology, and all of that. All of those things were at play here. And I think that looking back on it, you see those moments and you remember kind of how you got to where you got to. But now here we are going into 2025, and I'm excited to see Michael Penix. You know, like I think he showed in those 3 games, like Kirk Cousins conversation aside, just being excited about Michael Penix and what he can provide and potentially be for this offense. I know that's a long spiel, but like that's kind of just how I feel about all of this quarterback stuff. I don't get to talk about the quarterback stuff, so I'm like in terms of the Netflix show. So it's just been really fun to go back and rewatch and remember what you felt in those specific moments and see how they're presented.
Yeah, I think when you revisit the decision to sign Kirk Cousins, it was always the idea behind signing Kirk Cousins was always that there was a 2-year plan, right? That with some of the things Jarvis is saying, him coming off that Achilles injury, you knew or at least you should have known you weren't going to get the best version of Kirk Cousins in 2024. And in theory, you would get a better version of him in 2025. And the hope was that everything else would go right for you in 2024, that you could get through that season, make the playoffs, do whatever you do in January, and then really make a push in the second year. And unfortunately, that didn't sort of come to fruition. And so with Kirk, like, you know, that sort of buyer's remorse that I think a lot of people have, you know, it's understandable because he didn't live up to the hype. But I think a lot of that, at least from my perspective, was I think people unfairly putting this expectation on Kirk Cousins, sort of piggybacking on what Jarvis said, where it's like the general perception in Atlanta this time last year was that the Falcons had signed Tom Brady, was that the Falcons had signed Matt Stafford. And we saw those guys change teams and take already really strong established teams and make them Super Bowl contenders. But in reality, signing Kirk Cousins based off of his body of work was more like the Saints signing Derek Carr, or the Falcons acquiring, or I'm sorry, the Colts acquiring Matt Ryan or something like that. That was really more of what Kirk was bringing to the table. And you needed the rest of the team to kind of
position. Yeah.
You know, and sort of lift the floor, I guess you could say, so that Kirk could do whatever he could do so the Falcons could make sort of the playoffs. And, you know, when it comes to Kirk, like, Locked On Falcons listeners know that we had the thing that we were bequeathed from Locked On Vikings, which was the Kirk Chaos Meter, where I think people thought when Kirk was going to come in, he was going to be this perfect game manager, going back to the original question, T, with the turnovers. Well, like, Kirk has always been a quote unquote chaotic quarterback, where you get these ups and downs throughout the season. But when you have good defenses, good weapons, good offensive line, a running game, all the things that the Falcons were hoping that they had going for them, you can be a successful team with that. And so I think, you know, all of that was in the conversation with the idea behind Kirk Cousins. Obviously, all those plans didn't come to fruition, and hopefully the Falcons think that they can put their best foot forward this upcoming season, still on that 2-year plan. But now it's Michael Penix's turn to try to push this team not only to the playoffs, but further along at this stage. So, you know, for me, again, going back to what Tori was saying, like, you got to remember Kirktober, like, this is one of the reasons why, like, I don't hold this ill will towards Kirk Cousins, because those 4 weeks in October last year were like the best part of, you know, the most fun I've had being a Falcon fan in like basically a decade, right? They went on their Super Bowl run almost a decade ago. And so, like, to me, like, I don't look at, you know, the way it ended as sort of the way, that's not going to be my lasting memory of the Kirk Cousins era in Atlanta. It's going to be, you know, the swag surfing, all that stuff that was going on during that time, as opposed to the turnovers. And again, the last point I'll say, like, when you go and look at those 4 games, losing games, as Tori said, like, the Chargers game, yeah, you can definitely put that one on Kirk and the turnovers. The other games, like, I'm not going to say Kirk was playing lights out football. He wasn't playing at the same level he was playing earlier in the season. But, like, when you really break down those games, like, the reasons why the Falcons lost was not because of the quarterback. The quarterback was a contributing factor to it, but there were other variables, particularly the secondary in the Vikings game and in the defense in the Denver game, where, like, you know, Denver was just, like, marching up and down the field against the Falcons. Yeah. And it was just like nobody played well on that Sunday. So to sort of single out Kirk Cousins and say he was the reason why the Falcons lost, to me, feels disingenuous.
Yeah. And I think I always say there's enough blame to go around for the 2024 season. And I think subconsciously people forget that we did still have some questions saying, now, you do know the Falcons aren't a Kirk Cousins away from a Super Bowl run, right? You do know that. Like, I think a lot of people at the end of the season have more of that pain because they had kind of gotten into that mode after Kirktober of like, ooh, we could really go. But if you look back, we were still having conversation at this time last year before Matthew Judon, if you will, just as an example. I know he didn't work out, but we all knew that the team was still not a Kirk Cousins away from a Super Bowl run, right? So I think you've got to be so careful. Tori, you may have said it. Aaron, you may have said it, but I know someone said revisionist history. You got to be so careful that when you kind of step back or take a step back, that you really see 2024 for what it was. Now, we always talk about the Falcon, who has that dog in him, but who has that swag? You guys called out swag surfing, so we'll talk about swag when we come back. So, Tori, this was actually a little bit of like an offshoot of something that you did on AtlantaFalcons.com on the pod. So, Penix, again, talked about wanting to get the bins rocking again. And you guys, we talk about it ad nauseum on the show, kind of like bringing back the swag to the building, what it used to be back in that Super Bowl run or back in the Michael Vick days. And when I saw him in the interview with his do-rag on, I said last week that I want to see when we get to maybe not see him on his do-rag, but with the do-rag on, but ultimately it's kind of a part of his swag on and off the field. So like I said, a little bit of an offshoot of what you guys talked about. Tori, who's that player for you on this Falcons team with the most on and or off the field swag?
So I have a few different angles that I want to take on this, because to me there's a difference between swag and aura. And I want to say, that's the big thing is like Jesse Bates has aura. I think that he is somebody who has this, Darnell Mooney has this like aura about them. Pure swag, like pure just like going out and doesn't really care, is going to go and be who they are when they want to be and really flashy and all. Ray McLeod's up there. He's somebody who I think has quite a bit of swag. And then also, and this is kind of where I think people would kind of be like, what? But I actually think that James Pierce Jr. has a lot of swag. I think Jalen Walker has an aura about him. I think James Pierce Jr. has a little bit of swag to him.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see kind of what that manifests in a rookie year, because that's really difficult, I think, to immediately come into the league and it's like, oh, this person has like an it factor about them. But I think just from like watching Jalen Walker and his interviews and watching James Pierce Jr. and having had conversations with them and kind of really hoping to see kind of what their roles turn into in 2025, I think it's actually going to be one of those things where it's like you see a swagginess from James Pierce Jr. and you see an aura from Jalen Walker.
Yes, I like that because, Jarvis, I like to use my words. So we are going to expand the question. And I like aura, I like swag. So who's got that aura about them? Who's got that swag for you?
Wow. For me, I have to kind of go with the AJ Terrell. He got the swag, because he's not necessarily the flashy guy, because you can be cool and have swag too. You know what I'm saying? I experienced a little bit. I've been called cool in my day. You know what I'm saying? I know people might not believe that, but that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. So I recognize the cool swag in AJ Terrell because, and I think Tori made a great point earlier when she talked about like there are a lot of good individual players on this team. Did I just say that? But they don't get recognized nationally because they're mid. They've been a mid team for a very long time. So you don't get national respect until you win and you are a legitimate contender, right? Because they want to talk about stuff that moves the needle, and they're not going to a team that's been average to below average for the past 7 years and hasn't made the playoffs. They're just not gonna move the needle. So I think AJ Terrell is a guy that has that swag. And I think Michael Penix, we talked about him. He has that aura. He has a certain aura about himself. Like he's the type of guy that can say, people might be standing around after practice or something like that. Like, yeah, man, what y'all gonna do tonight? Get into tonight? You know what I'm saying? Like everybody like, yeah, I'm about to go over here. And then you got another guy that might be like, yeah, I'm about to go over here. They're like, Mike, what you about to get into, man? I'm doing something. I might go fishing or something. Oh, cool. Sure. Let's go. It's just that he has that. Like, he just has that aura about himself that just says, I want to be around you. I want to do whatever you got going on. Or if you want to go to a spot, let's go to the club. Like, I don't go to clubs, but I want to go kick it with you. That's the type of aura that Michael Penix has. So yeah, those are my two.
I like it. What about you, Free? Aura and swag.
Well, naturally, the fullback
As he
position,
like fixes his beard, that's a little swaggy.
Hey, it's about to go down when he starts pinching the beard.
Yeah.
It's about to go down.
But naturally, the fullback position has all the swag in the world. But unfortunately, the Falcons do not have a fullback on the roster, and so. When I'm thinking about it, my answer probably would have been AJ Terrell if Jarvis hadn't taken it. But if we're just talking aura, I'm going to go for the player that is the closest to a fullback on this roster, and he may not be the guy that immediately jumps out with the big personality, but that aura is there when he gets on the football field, and that is none other than Charlie Warner when he's out there clearing piles.
Yeah,
let's go.
From Tiger, Georgia, down home boy coming to the dome every single weekend, and just that choo-choo trains are coming. And for those defensive players, you better get off the tracks when Charlie Warner's lined up across from you.
I like it.
I love it.
I got one more T.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm surprised no one didn't mention him. Drake London.
No, don't do it.
Drake
You already knew I was gonna go with light skin. You knew that.
Sorry, T. But no, just he's a California cat too. My experiences playing with dudes from California, they're a little different. They wired a little different. They move a little differently, but just the way that he carries himself off the field and the way he just plays, the guy that he turns into on the field.
Yeah.
My goodness. Those are the type of guys that you can get behind. Like, those type of guys that you take in the alley with you. If somebody said, hey, man, there's 3 guys over there, they're about to jump on you. So, hey, you might want to have some help as you walk down this back alley when it's really dark. So, yeah, Drake is one of those dudes. I know he'll light up the room, you know what I'm saying, in a lot of ways, but he's the type of guy that he just has that. Oh, I mean, I hate to use that term sometimes because I feel like it's overused, but
it's something there.
That's who he is. Yeah. It's just hard to ignore on Sundays.
Yeah, and it's natural, I think, for him. It's nothing that he has to manufacture. It's just there. And like you said, oftentimes, Cali guys, people from the West Coast, they are just naturally laid back, but they stay laid back even in the most heightened of situations. Like, you wouldn't want them to have your back because they're probably going to walk the other way, run the other way, or look the other way. No, I think he's going to go and look for it. Yeah, exactly. I think he's going and looking for it. Like, when he comes in the room, he assesses the situation to determine if he's going to have to pop off. And I like that. I like that because I would like somebody to walk in the room with me and make sure that they have my back. So, yeah, he's always going to be my number one for swag. But for aura, I actually like Bijan Robinson. I definitely think he has. I think that he has something that, whether it's his presence on the field, when he's at the podium, heck, when he's just in a room, there's something that just draws you into him. So, yeah, he was my pick for aura because I definitely think from the first time we met him, I can remember I think Bijan might have talked to us for like 10 or 12 minutes because he just wanted to have conversation. And as the conversation went on, we kind of got engaged in it as well, because everything that he says, he doesn't talk a whole heck of a lot, but he says what he says, and then he moves on, but he leaves you kind of like hanging on his every word. Very thoughtful, very cerebral guy. But yeah, he's my guy that I feel like, that's some super cool aura.
He's the future pastor of New Life Baptist Church.
Yeah, like, for real. He's definitely going to be on something different. So I can't wait to see. Yeah, like, isn't that something though? Like, he brings that type of thing to the table to where you're already thinking about, we know what Bijan's going to be like in that Ray Lewis style. Maybe not as vocal, but in that kind of space of like, he could be anything he wants to after this because he's just that guy. Speaking of, we expect Bijan Robinson and a whole lot of Falcons to shine, but football party fam, you guys are with the commentary. So bring it on the other side about whose time it is to shine. All right, so we're going to have a little fun with this one. NFL.com released its list of one player to root for from each team this season for the Falcons. They chose Kyle Pitts and gave this reason, quote, maybe with a full season of Michael Penix Jr. under center, Pitts can get into a legitimate groove and help the Falcons compete, or at least secure a stronger market for his services elsewhere. So first to our analysts, but we're definitely going to look to see what you guys have to say in the comments and pull you in. But Tori, which one Falcon are you rooting for this season and why?
I think it's Tyler Allgeier. Tyler Allgeier. I didn't want to pick, I mean, I could pick, 7 guys who have more national name recognition than Tyler Allgeier, but he is on the last year of his rookie deal. And I don't know what's going to happen with that beyond this year. But I think what Tyler Allgeier has been for the Falcons since he got here is special. And I don't know what it looks like, but I want him to have as many opportunities as he possibly can to be more of a nationally recognized back in this league. Because I think what he does is very special. I think I enjoy, we always talk about so we're talking about the aura of Bijan, and we're talking about just like Bijan is this huge star and everyone knows Bijan. Everyone's talking about Bijan. And I kind of want something for Tyler Allgeier. Yeah. And I think like we see it and like we understand kind of what Tyler Allgeier is to this organization, but I don't know if it's seen nationally. And I've always enjoyed and respected the way that Tyler Allgeier plays the game. So I want to see the best for him. And again, that's probably not the player that everybody is like, it's probably not even the top 10 of players that they're thinking of in this season. But because he's on the last year of that rookie deal, I want him as set up as well as he possibly could coming out of it for whatever the future holds for him.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I like that pick a lot. What about you, Aaron? Who's the one Falcon you're rooting for this season?
Well, in a similar vein, talking about Kyle Pitts and Tyler Allgeier, I'll pick another guy that's going into a contract year. I'll pick Arnold Ebiketie because obviously James Pierce, Jalen Walker, they're the future that we're all excited to see what they turn into in Atlanta. But it's been a very long time since the Falcons have developed a pass rusher internally in Atlanta to someone that people will look at and say, hey, that guy's actually worth paying a decent amount of money for and whatnot. And so I hope, whether it's here in Atlanta or elsewhere after this season, I hope Arnold Ebiketie is that guy that, plays at a high enough level this upcoming season so that, he gets paid by somebody because someone's going to see him as a part of a core part of their pass rush. It would just be nice to have that proof of concept so that in the future, when we're talking about, Jalen Walker, James Pierce's development, it's like, hey, well, the Falcons did successfully develop Arnold Ebiketie as well. So it makes it feel like a lot more optimistic that they will actually, hit on both of these 2 first-round picks because, since Patrick Kearney, since the Falcons have successfully developed in internet, that was in the 1900s for you kids out there. So that's how long it's been. For the Falcons. And so I would like for us to sit here and say, hey, that AK, he did good in Atlanta for however long he's left in Atlanta.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And of course, further into the draft, but it was really nice to see how the Falcons were able to, albeit the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to reap the benefits ultimately, but to see how they were able to, for example, develop Foye Oluokun as more one of those recent guys where, I think we all rooted for him because he was someone who was a late round draft pick that really turned on and got paid and is doing fine over in Jayville. What about you, Jarvis? Who's maybe that one player this year that you're rooting for?
I'm going to go with the 2023 third round pick, Zach Harrison. Here's why. This guy, I feel, has been put at a disadvantage, right? Because when he came in, he was playing an attacking style defense under Ryan Neuzil. Attack. I can still hear Ryan Neuzil saying that out loud in my head. The dude just was so intense in the defense, and he transferred on the field. And then he moved to a passive style defense and the 1.5 gap scheme and Jimmy Lake, right? So I feel like, and he still was able to come along at the end of both seasons. So that just goes to show you that it's something there. It's something there. I feel like Terry Fontenot, a lot of people kind of question the pick, but when you saw the size and you saw him start to come along and start to being developed, and you start to see what he can potentially be, and then, and you look at it towards the end of 2023, he had 3 sacks. And then in 2024, with a different style and had to change his body too, though that stuff matters when it comes to development. So I think that going back to the attacking style defense under Jeff Ulbrich, I feel like he's a guy that I'm going to be rooting for very intently, because I'm interested to see what he could potentially come in this particular defense.
I'll add something about Zach Harrison too, because you're talking about like the disadvantages of what he's had to go through over his years in Atlanta, like having to specifically like move in and out and be fluid in his weight and what he's being asked to do and what position he's really playing. Like that's really difficult to do for even veterans who are 5-6 years into their careers, not just 1 or 2. And something that I know that Nate Ollie has spoken about, Jeff Ulbrich has spoken about, when it comes to Zach Harrison, I think that the role that they have for him is a bit more in line with what it was with Ryan Neuzil. I can't say for sure, having not really seen it in action yet, but I do think they see him more of like a big end type of guy. And I'm really excited for Zach Harrison to be able to put his feet down into something and have a foundation that's more solid than it is swift and changing. Yeah. Because to your point, Jarvis, like he has flashed and he has had moments where he has been a really important piece of that, especially in, I think, run defense, which was something that the Falcons struggled with last year. Like I have high hopes for Zach Harrison, and I really want him to have some level of consistency, because I think when he does have consistency and he does have a foundation that's more rock solid, he's shown the ability to be able to be a playmaker, even if it doesn't show up on a stat sheet.
Yeah. So Aaron picked my first guy, Arnold Ebiketie. He was going to be the guy I was rooting for, because I still, AK, as I have said before, he was the only pick I had ever gotten right for the Falcons in all my years of covering them. And so I've always wanted to kind of see him do well. And I just think, like Jarvis said earlier, just the person of Arnold Ebiketie is just really a solid human, and you just kind of root for him, but then also rooting for Zach Harrison for much the same reason. And I just can remember talking to Calais Campbell about him and how high he was on him. And when you think about a guy like that, being able to see something in Zach Harrison, you got to think that there's something there that Jeff Ulbrich can work with. But I will say this, and then we'll kind of go rapid fire in our last couple of minutes. But there's one guy that I'll add to my list of players I'm rooting for, Ryan Neuzil. Because if Ryan Neuzil can be solid, then that means things are going to go well for Michael Penix Jr. So I'm going to root for Ryan Neuzil to just be solid. We don't need you to be an all-star center. Not you don't have to be a Pro Bowl center. You can be if you want to be, or if it gets to that, but just be solid. Just be a guy that when you snap the ball, there are no issues. No problems. Tori,
I always say the least we talk about the center, the better it is for everyone.
It is. 100%. It is. I cannot agree with you more. So I decided that I was going to switch my pick to him, because at the end of the day, not saying you have to be Landon Dickerson, you just be Ryan Neuzil and be a good one, and all's going to be well. But speaking of Ryan Neuzil, congratulations, of course, because he got married recently. The ceremony took place at TPC Sugarloaf Golf Course, I think, this weekend. Nice golf course, not saying anything, because hey, there's some club space at some golf courses that are top shelf. But I was just wondering, from you guys' perspective, Jarvis, I know you've already gone around with that whole process, but just curious from you, if you would choose all over again, would you choose the same venue? And then for Tori and Aaron, when it's that time, would you guys choose a golf course, or you got another venue in mind?
I know for me, I would definitely 1,000 times choose Glendalough Manor. It's a very nice outdoor venue. It's in Tyrone, Georgia. It is absolutely amazing, and it's financially feasible as well. My wife and I didn't go broke trying to pay for a wedding, so it was absolutely amazing. The people were so nice, and it was just so amenable to all of the. My wife didn't go. She wasn't a Brazil or anything, but she likes to have order. So, but yeah, that would be a definitely a cool facility to. I would definitely do it all over again for sure.
Oh, sweet. How about you, Tori? Golf course or some other spot?
I probably would not choose a golf course. I don't think I'll be like a bridezilla, but I definitely am too type A to let anything go to chance. So I really like. There are so many great wineries in the state of Georgia that like. Nice. If you could just keep the wine flowing, like have a good scenery, like that's all I would want. I wouldn't want this like a big party thing. I would just want to be with my people, have my wine, and just chill. So that would probably be my preference. But hey, I don't have a ring on my finger, so I can't say one way or the other.
Right. Baby steps, right? Baby steps. All right, Free. I know you don't like to talk about these type of warm, fuzzy, mushy things, but come on, man.
He's scratching the beard. So I'm interested in what he's going to say. He's scratching.
Yeah, because I need to know if you're going to force the future Mrs. Freeman to have this shindig on a golf course.
Well, I don't know if I would choose a golf course, but like most guys, like this is not something I've thought about a lot in my life. So like whatever my future wife to be wants, I'll probably be cool with. But as far as a ceremony, wherever, a friend of mine that I knew in college in Pittsburgh had his reception at the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium. So like part of me was like, maybe at the Atlanta Aquarium, that would be a cool place to have a different vibe for a reception or something like that. So that, again, literally looking at the rundown, 30 minutes ago or an hour or so before the show was the first time I actually had a chance to actually think about this. So this is truly off the cuff.
Off the dome.
Yes.
The only correct answer is whatever she wants.
Wants.
Right? Like whatever she wants. That's the one.
Yep. Yeah. That's essentially your role as on that day. Like, yes, ma'am. Yes, baby. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I like those answers. Yep. That's pretty darn cool.
That's all I was
like Tori. Like Tori, I got to take baby steps. We got to crawl before we walk. But just know, unfortunately, Atlanta, you won't like this, but unless somebody comes up with a better venue than any place in my hometown, I can't say I'm going to get married anywhere but New Orleans. Because where the heck else am I going to have that type of second line with that type of brass band, with that type of food? Just saying.
It's your hometown. It's your hometown. Yeah. Like you can't change that.
Yeah. You can't go wrong. I was
amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I have a much more of an appreciation for it, by the way. Once, like, I left and kind of went back, now I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place to be. But yeah, Atlanta has some really nice venues as well. Outdoor, indoor. It's an incredible city too. So I couldn't go wrong if miraculously somebody actually wanted to go ahead and pull the trigger. Like pull the trigger in Atlanta. All good. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with Aaron and his frequent guest analyst Jarvis as your second listen, and check out some of Tori's work like we talked about earlier today at atlantafalcons.com. See you next time.